Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Eric Dumbach here at the Coach's Coach, and welcome to our call today. And as many of you know, if you've been on some of our calls earlier this week, we're going through a series of expert interviews, the top trends impacting the business coaching industry in 2012, and what you should do about them. And this is going to be a great interview. I've got my friend Spike Humer on the line. And Spike, you still able to hear us okay?
I can hear you perfectly, Eric.
Perfect. And listen, do me a favor, those of you on the call, if you don't mind, just jot a few comments in either the question window or the chat window to let me know that you can hear us both. And we're going to get started in just a moment as soon as we get confirmation. Yeah, good. People are hearing us. That's good stuff. Just while we wait a minute or two, Spike, to get into the content here, man, how was your year? Tell me a little bit about something that happened in 2011 that you loved or whatever, and momentarily we'll jump into talking about 2012.
Okay. Well, it's been a really solid year for me, Eric. I mean, candidly, I think one of the opportunities that I've had as a consultant and as a business advisor is that a lot of people were in transition, so I've had probably more demand for my services than I've had time. But in addition to that, I released a book this year,
Nice.
created a membership site on business building for Japan, and in the process of doing one for China as well.
Wow.
So it's been a year of transition, but positive transition.
Nice. Nicely done. I've been asking guys that the past couple days, and it's just good to hear how good your year has been. I know there's a lot of people out there that are dooming and glooming and whatever, but it's been a great year for us too. Really good year. We actually spent more time on holiday, Spike, this past year than any other year since I've been in business, which is about a decade now. We were away from our business for more than 3.5 months in total.
Wow, nice.
Yeah, when I say away, I mean not checking emails, not coaching, not doing any of that. I mean literally away. So it's been good, and I really owed it to my wife and kids to do that. So this has been a great year, and I'm looking forward to a great 2012. And so hey, let's jump right into it. For those on the call that haven't met Spike Humer, man, I just want you to tell us a little bit about how you got into business coaching and just bring us quickly up to speed on your career, because you're actually a guru and a legend in this business, but you've been kind of under the radar. I mean, I was introduced to you by a mutual friend, and but you've been kind of quiet. I mean, but rocking it, for quite a while here. So before we get into prognosticating about 2012, what was your career prior to business coaching? What were you doing?
Well, the biggest part of it, Eric, I guess, is that I spent a lot of time running manufacturing companies, and I kind of started from the ground up, walking in the door, running a machine, and worked my way up to managing a number of manufacturing companies. And a couple things that it did for me. Number one is that it taught me about efficiency and effectiveness and process and leadership and all those kinds of things. But one of the things that I recognized in doing that, Eric, was that a lot of people around me understood how to work in a corporation, but didn't necessarily know how to work outside of a corporation. In many cases, they knew how to do the things that they learned in university, but in many cases, they lack some of the critical thinking skills. And so because of that, one of the things that really was probably a defining moment in my career is that I was selected in 1994 to head up a business process reengineering team for a company that was about a $700 million company. And through that, we basically process mapped every activity inside the business and everything from marketing to manufacturing to the radio stations to the whole shebang. And really what it allowed me to do was kind of develop a whole different perspective. And I recognized that while I was able to learn that, I kind of assumed that everybody else knew it but me. But what I found out is that it was kind of a unique skill that not a lot of people had that exposure. So after a period of time, what happened is that I started working with some friends and some colleagues, and a few people turned into clients, and I recognized that that wasn't common knowledge. I mean, how to look at an entire process or how to look at an entire business and really optimize it for performance and profitability. So what happened is that I became a part-time consultant or a part-time coach for small business owners, and then in 1996 I kind of made the leap and went into that business full-time. And I left I guess kind of the optimization portion of it, got into doing turnarounds because I recognized that a lot of businesses, even if they could identify the challenge or the opportunity, just like today, sometimes when you're inside of a dark cloud, it's hard for you to see the light of day and it's hard for you to see the opportunities. But what happens, that happens in businesses as well, not just in society, not just in economies, and not just in the media. So what would happen is that I would find a number of companies that in many cases knew that they had a problem, but they didn't know how to fix it. So I became a turnaround consultant for a short period of time. I moved from being a consultant to being a CEO of a public company, and the turnaround there, and then I went back into full-time consulting again in 2003.
Nice. So went into it and full-time in 2003.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. Well, actually, it was '96, but it took the hiatus to run the public company for about a year and a half. I started off as a consultant there, did the turnaround, then became the CEO for about a year and a half, and then jumped back into it. But since that time, I've had the opportunity to work with a lot of very successful people, some of the well-known gurus, some of the people that a lot of the a lot of your coaches, a lot of your listeners probably know people like Jay Abraham, people like Brian Tracy, people like John Assaraf, become friends and clients, Brendan Burchard, people like that, or people that I've worked with both as a speaker, as an advisor, in some cases as a collaborator, or as a consultant. I consulted for Jay Abraham's business for a number of years, became his lead consultant, but also was his personal consultant for about 4 or 5 years for his business, and also for a lot of the ventures that he and I had done together. Then I moved into the speaking industry. I've spoken really around the world. I've spoken in about 20, I've spoken in about 15 countries, I guess, altogether, but I've had people from about 25 countries that have come to programs and bought products and sought my consulting services.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned Rich Schefren is a friend of yours and colleague, and of course he's a legend in internet marketing specifically.
Yep, absolutely. Yep, one of the brightest guys I know.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned Chet Holmes.
Chet Holmes still is a client, and still is a friend, and still is a colleague, and he's someone that I know quite well, and I've been friends with for a long time.
Yeah, so all that just to say, anybody who's been in the business coaching consulting industry for the past 10 years knows these names, and I just so appreciate you being on the call here today and adding value to our network. And so look, let's jump right into it. With all that in mind, you've got a lot of experience here, a lot of perspective, and let me ask you the question: how have you seen the coaching industry change in the last year or last couple years? And then we'll use that to talk about what's coming in 2012.
Okay. Well, I think the biggest shift that I've seen, Eric, candidly, has been the shift away from the guru-centric model. I know when I first got into doing a lot of business coaching and consulting, it was very easy for someone who had a big name or a big brand or who was well recognized to bring 1,000 people into the room. And then from that, they would migrate them into another program and then maybe ultimately into some one-on-one coaching or consulting. But I think what's happened over the last couple of years, and I think this will continue, Eric, is that people aren't necessarily looking for a big name or a big brand. They're looking for people that can have a big impact. And the ways that we're going to do that, I think, as coaches and consultants going forward is going to change dramatically and change significantly. And I think it's starting to happen already, but I think it's only going to accelerate in this rate and pace of change.
Okay, so we got to explore that a little bit. Now, the age of the guru, really, I think, is some language I've heard you use in the past when we've talked about this, right? So people going out to see the big names, and you've worked with a bunch of these guys, the Brian Tracy's, John Assaraf's, and all these guys are your friends. But what is it? What if they're not looking for the big name? What are they specifically looking? You said big results. Well, tell me more about that.
Well, and this is not to be less than totally respectful to anyone out there that that has a big name or a big brand, because I think they do a lot of great work. But I think it was just people were less critical in terms of assessing what it is that they wanted, and I think also people had fewer choices. So because of that, they were kind of gravitating to someone that they heard or someone that they were referred to, either online through direct mail or whatever. But I think now what people really want is that they want someone that they can interact with. They want someone that can bring them information in very concise ways. They want someone who can not talk at them but can talk with them. And I think the days of showing up in a large audience and getting your information has died down significantly. And now what I think most people want, what most people need, is that they don't just need broad solutions. They need solutions to their specific problems. They need bridges to their particular opportunities. And because of that, they're relying more and more on coaches that they can interact with on a much more intimate, much more effective, much more strategic level, as opposed to interacting with someone on a broad level, if that makes sense.
I totally get that. And boy, you're speaking my language. Some of the language we've used, just even this past year, you may remember, we released a course called E-Marketing Pipeline, but one of the premises in that course was the days of being a generalist business coach where you can go out and basically fill a seminar room with 100 or 1,000 business owners or whatever and really impact their business with a general kind of business information are by and large passing or past. And now we want to go out and be specialists and really be able to interact at a very refined level of specificity in a given business. Now, is that along the lines of what you're talking about, what you're saying?
Yeah, it really is, and I guess probably the best analogy that I could give you, Eric, is kind of the search engine model of consulting or coaching. You know, I mean, you know, the amount of information that is out there is just astounding. I mean, there's more information that gets created, you know, virtually every 18 months than has existed in the history of the world. You know,
Wow.
and part of that is the advent of the internet and proliferation of information that we all kind of generate through video and blogs and all those types of things. But if you think about the fact that there's so much information out there, that doesn't necessarily mean that there's more knowledge out there. Because what happens is that the information is so broad and so vast that most people can't tap into that. Now, what happened is that, you know, when Google and search engines like that came along, now all of a sudden that information became accessible. So because of that, I can do a search and I can put in a specific keyword or something like that, and I can pull out the exact information that I need for me at a particular moment, at a particular time, on a particular topic, so that search engine has incredible value to me. And I think coaching going forward is going to have to be able to do that. And I think, you know, rather than being able to be an expert on everything in every industry, in every market, in every geography, in every language, in every culture, in every activity that goes on in the business, you have to be a lot more effective, not only at drilling down on a specific opportunity or a specific market or a specific niche, but also you have to be able to bring specific solutions to specific problems that exist for specific people.
Boy, that is well said. And man, dude, I got to slow you down. Can you say that last phrase again? That was really good. That was good.
Well, it really does have to do with specificity, Eric. I mean, and you mentioned it at the beginning of the conversation, and I think it really does come down to the fact that we have to have specific solutions to specific problems for specific people.
That's good.
And to the degree that we can do that, we'll not only increase our impact, we'll also increase our effectiveness, but we'll also increase our business for ourselves. Because people don't want broad solutions, as you say; they need specific solutions. And our ability to really kind of narrow in and focus in on that, and really deliver consistent, concise, and really credible results with people is the key to being successful, I think, moving forward in the future.
Very powerful. And okay, so you mentioned, you kind of touched on this. I could ask the question, well, why is this happening? And you mentioned that the information creation rate has, dramatically increased. And can you say those figures again and unpack that for us?
Yeah. Well, I'll give you the exact figure that that I first heard, and I'll give you the number that I recently heard. Starting in 1996, there was more information that was created from 1996 until last year than had existed in the history of the entire written history of the world. Okay, that includes cave drawings and the whole shebang. The last statistic that I heard, that in every 18 to 24 months, the amount of information that is available on the internet will double. Wow. So what happens is that now you're not talking about megabytes, you're not talking about gigabytes, you're not even talking about terabytes, you're talking about xanobytes or xenobytes or whatever the term is that really talks about, the size of information is so great that no one in this world, I don't care how smart you are, how good you are, how committed or how motivated you are, you're not going to be able to be an expert in everything, nor is a business owner going to be able to be expert in everything that they do. So I think because of that, what that means is that a business owner, in order to be successful, they can't always hire it, they can't always develop it, they can't always recruit it. In some cases, they can't even contract with it on an effective basis. So what they need are people that really have the ability to kind of tap into not just information, but essential knowledge that they can bring to that business owner, that business owner can apply in their business at a specific time. And our ability as a coach or a consultant to do that, to be an information consolidator, but also an information implementer where we help the business owner turn that into knowledge, ultimately into expertise, and finally into results, will be the thing that really separates people who are successful as a coach or consultant in the future versus today.
Yeah, that is very, very powerful, and I love it. Now, let's make it a little more personal. Here on the screen, I've got a picture of one of your products, and it's called the 10-Day Turnaround. But here's what I want to hear from you. I mean, you came out of a background where you're doing turnarounds, manufacturing, and then you led this large company and whatever. But given everything you've told us, how did you make that shift, the shift that you're talking about? How did you make it personally? Can you tell us a little bit about your journey? Because I got to think people want to hear, how did you do it?
Yeah, absolutely, Eric, and it's a great question, and I appreciate you asking it. The big shift for me, Eric, was that I would go into a business and a business was struggling. In some cases, I mean, they literally were weeks away, if not months away. In some cases, even days away from going out of business. And one of the things that I recognized is that no business, with the exception of legislation, natural disaster, or some kind of illegal activity, got into trouble overnight. What happened is that they got into trouble over time, and they got into trouble because they stopped paying attention to the small things. They stopped paying attention to the important things, and they either couldn't see them or they saw them and chose not to pay attention to them. Until eventually they became so big, so significant, and so negatively impactful for the business business or the business owner that they really had to deal with it. It's the oh crap moment, where they just wake up in the middle of the night and say, oh crap, I can't make payroll. Oh crap, I can't really pay my bills. But one of the things that I recognized, Eric, is that, and this was the huge shift for me, because doing turnarounds can be very stressful. It's very time consuming. It's energy draining, and it's not always fun. In fact, most of the time it's not. But one of the things that I recognized is that we can move people from the oh crap moment to the aha moment. And one of the ways that we could do was to take the same strategies that I used in turning companies around and really allowing people to create a model for transition, a model for change, or a model for transformation as opposed to a traditional turnaround. So instead of being forced to change, what people could do is actually choose the direction of change and the timing of change that they wanted to implement in their lives and in their business. And to the degree that people could do that, they got to, they were able to build a business that they never got to that point of the precipice where they were going to fall off the edge in terms of being able to survive. So now it's a question of, if you have a stable business, even if you have a successful business, how can you make sure that what you're doing today is not only going to make sure that you're successful today, but also will make you significant tomorrow in your marketplace, in your business, and in the lives of the people that you're trying to impact. And I think as a coach or a consultant, that's a question that we have to be asking ourselves on an ongoing basis, because what we do today will not be what we need to do tomorrow, and what we do tomorrow won't be what we need to do next year in order to be able to provide the same level of service and the same level of impact and the same level of significance in the lives and businesses of our clients.
Yeah. So you came into this industry with this kind of passion. I mean, everything you're sharing, you're very passionate about, and you went full time in 2003. Mm-hmm. But you must have really narrowed down. I mean, we just talked about the information that needs to be. I didn't even write it down, but specific solutions for specific people. You'll have to give me the phrase again, but you applied that model to yourself, and you created this product called the 10-day turnaround. And I found this on the web as I was searching around looking at it. But I'd like to unpack that for me. I mean, what are your keywords? What keyword phrases are you trying to control? I mean, just give me a more specific sense on how you're doing your marketing. I mean, you're not trying to be everything to anybody. You're not trying to be a generalist. You're trying to go out to the market. You're trying to find companies that are probably manufacturing companies, but companies that really are stand to benefit enormously from what you know about doing what you've just talked about and turning around businesses.
Well, Eric, from a positioning standpoint, it really is about performance acceleration. It's not necessarily about turnarounds, not necessarily about transformation. It's about how can you accelerate your performance, which ultimately will increase your profits. And the market that I work with, I don't work with large companies anymore. In fact, if I have an opportunity to go in even to a mid-sized company in a traditional sense, it's not really the place that I want to be. Who I work with today are small to mid-sized entrepreneurial-based business owners. And the reason why I choose to do that is because I want to be able to impact the people, and I want to be able to work with the people or the person who has the biggest vested interest in their own success or failure. When you're working with large corporations, even when you're doing consulting with mid-sized corporations, in many cases you're working with a board, you're working with an executive team, and what most people's interest at that point is saving their job or not looking bad or making sure that you don't bring a solution that they haven't advocated to their boss or to the board. But when you're working with an entrepreneur, I mean, that's when you're belly to belly across the desk or on the same side of the desk with the person. I mean, really what you're doing is that you're facing the reality of what the business owner is seeing. And, as opposed to being an adversary where you're coming in and kind of cramming advice down people's throats, you're really sitting on the same side of the desk almost with your arm around the business owner and saying, look, I see what you're seeing and I understand the challenges that you're facing. Let's work together and find a solution. It's kind of a collaborative relationship as opposed to a consulting relationship or even a coaching relationship. Mm-hmm. And I think that collaboration is what inspires me and what motivates me. And it's also where I get the most jazz and joy, because you're not only impacting someone's business, in many cases you're impacting their lives. You're developing personal relationships as well as professional relationships, and you're able to see, the pain and the success and, the rewards and the, and the failures that the business owner has. But in many cases you earn a level of trust and respect that means that you're not always trying to sell an idea to someone. Basically what they're doing is that they're embracing a concept that they really have been collaboratively involved in terms of creation. And so because of that, for me, I've narrowed my focus, I've narrowed my niche, and I've really narrowed the approach that I take in working with businesses. I don't work with businesses that are on the precipice of failure anymore because it's too daunting. I work with companies that are doing, relatively well, would like to do better, or companies that are doing really well today, but they're not really certain they're going to do as well tomorrow because they're not quite certain what the landscape is going to look like. So I help them formulate or crystallize a vision. There's a process that I take people through that I don't outline in the book, but I share with most of my clients, and I've utilized when I was doing traditional turnarounds, and I use it today when I'm doing transformational work or performance acceleration, whatever you want to call it. And that's the ASIA model. It's an acronym that I created for a 4-stage process. When I was doing turnarounds with companies, generally I would have about a week or two to kind of get a really a handle on what was going on in the business. And if you couldn't do it within 2 weeks or you couldn't do it within 30 days, in a lot of cases you just didn't have a chance to go beyond that. The business was in such bad shape that if you didn't have an impact relatively quickly, you were in serious trouble. So what I would do with every business is that I would go in and I would do an assessment, which is the A in Asia, right? Where are they today? Where do they want to be? And what are the gaps that exist between the two? Right? Yep. And I was able to kind of help people kind of crystallize that. In many cases, a business owner, Eric, would know exactly where they were.
Yep.
And they didn't know where they wanted to go. They just knew they didn't want to be where they were, right? As I'd ask someone, it's like, okay, well, what is it you want to do in this? I just want to get the heck out of this crap, right? But they didn't know what the future looked like or really where it was that they were trying to go. But from that, we would start to formulate a strategy, all right? What are the strategies that we had to design or utilize that were going to help us bridge the gap between where they were and where they were going to be. In some cases, it was cramming down costs. In some cases, it was shutting down business units. In some cases, it was speeding up receivables and slowing down payables, those types of things. Well, we basically would formulate a strategy and say, okay, what is it that we're going to do that's going to make a difference in this business right away? Yep. Now, it's great to have plans. It's great to have that strategy, but it really comes down to being able to implement, right? You have to implement the tactics. You can know what to do, but if you don't get it done, the bottom line is that strategy is never going to come to fruition. So as a consultant, even today, one of the things that I do is that I make sure that my clients actually implement the things. We don't just have a conversation. We implement the strategies, and we do that through the tactics. And then finally, and this is probably the most critical thing, I think, for a business owner, but also for a coach or a consultant, and that is to set up a system of adjustment. Right? Yeah. Remember I mentioned that most businesses didn't get into trouble overnight?
Yeah.
Well, it's because they didn't make those small adjustments along the way when something started going askew or something started going off course. So what we would do is that we would actually formulate how we're going to measure our progress so that in the course of 10 days, we can implement those systems, and then we set up the systems of adjustments so that we could see if we were making progress. Did we make the right decisions? Did we take the right actions? Did things happen as we expect? And then ultimately what you could do is you could extend your operating horizon and make the business more stable. Now, if you're working with a business or you're working with someone who's already doing okay, but they want to do better, it's even more important that you make those adjustments along the way so they never get too far off course, so that once they figure out what it is they want to do, that they can actually stay the course. And as the environment or the economy or competition changes, that they can make those small adjustments along the way so they never have to make the big adjustments any day.
Yep. Well, one of the things I love about this Asian model is it gives a very clear sense to me about how you actually work with your clients. You're diving into the operations at a really deep level. You're really getting down into the bowels of their operation and doing this stuff, and that's your background.
Yes.
That's what you've done. And it's interesting because yesterday we were having a conversation with Darren Sherlaw, and I was asking him, hey, what do you see coming in the next year or two for coaching? He was saying, years ago, coaching was the whole coaching industry emerged as a reaction to the consulting industry. Consulting industry being defined as come in, do some assessment, give you a plan, some expertise, and leave again. Coaching being defined as just much softer, basically trying to draw the answers out of you. And he said both of those are, swings of the pendulum. And he said where coaching is going to end up, and he said the trend is, and really I think you're saying something very similar. The trend is it's a blend. You're not just coming in and trying to draw the good stuff out of them. You're actually coming in and getting down in the bowels of their operation, down the trenches, and you are doing more of a hybrid between consulting and coaching. You're trying to draw the best out of them for sure, but you are really bringing the best out of yourself to try to help them along.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, it's perfect. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I think that's a great assessment. The analogy that kind of came to my mind was this. That if someone came to you and they said, I want to lose weight, you could consult with them and you could tell them, eat less, move more, right?
Yep.
That's all you have to do. Just eat less, move more, or one or the other, and you'll lose weight. That's what a consultant does. But as a coach, it's almost like you're going over and knocking on the door, getting up with them and saying, come on, let's go to the gym. You're kind of putting your arm around them. You're going to the gym. You're working out with them. You're spotting with them. You're kind of going through the challenges that they have. You're understanding the things that are going on during that time that you're working together. And at the end of the day, you know exactly what they did. You know exactly what the results that they got. And you're doing it from a much more collaborative, much more and I don't want to make it sound like consultants are callous or uncaring, because they're not. Not all of them anyway. Some could be. But I think when you're a coach, you're a little bit more nurturing. But on top of that, you're really on the same side of the desk. And when I say that, I don't say that in a careless fashion. I think as a consultant, very often you're sitting on the other side of the desk and you're kind of telling people what to do. In some cases, you're telling them how to do it, but you're not really doing it with them. You're not really holding them accountable to themselves. And this whole concept of accountability, that some people are resistant to it because they say, you know what, I don't want to be accountable to somebody else. Well, you know what, as a coach or as a consultant, I don't want you to be accountable to someone else. I want you to be accountable to yourself. So the only way I can help you do that is if I understand what's important to you, I understand what it is you're trying to do, then I can figure out how we can best work together to create the results that are most important to you. Now, I can give you my opinion on what you should do or what you could do, but ultimately, at the end of the day, it's really about what's most important to you as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, that allows me to be effective as a coach in helping you get there.
Yeah, and this really brings us back to what you were saying earlier, which is the age of the guru, spending all the money to go to a seminar and just get inspired with a bunch of good ideas and taking home a notebook or whatever. I mean, it's passé. I mean, people want you to be in the trenches with them and help them get it done. I mean, that's what I'm hearing. Now, as you've done this in your own life and business, my question is, have you been finding that you're gravitating toward, or you're seeing a trend of certain businesses and certain industries gravitating toward you? Have you seen any of that?
Yeah, actually I have, Eric. I mean, for me, and I don't know, it's, some of it has been by design, some of it's been by opportunity just because of proximity. But, in many cases, it's the people that have been giving advice that have been seeking my advice to help them figure out how to be not relevant, but to be more effective in conveying their information or conveying their message or having a grander or greater impact on other people's businesses and other people's lives. And it doesn't mean, I still work to some degree with manufacturing companies. I still work with, small businesses that could be in a service industry or even a product industry. But a lot of people that I work with are people that are information providers or advisors or people that are providing professional services. And I think part of the challenge, Eric, and part of the reason why that's happened is that, if you think about why most people go into business, it's usually for one of 4 or 5 reasons, right? They're passionate about something and they turn a hobby into a profession. They're professionally trained, like you. I mean, you went to school as an engineer. For a period of time, you were an engineer. Yep. It could be that you grew up in that industry and it was part of a family business and you just continue the legacy. It could be that you went to work for somebody and you learned how to do something and you got fired, you got upset, and you ended up decided to become the competitor of the company that you work for, or it could have just been by design. You said, what, this is a good opportunity, I'm going to step into it because I can make money. But at the end of the day, what most business owners are looking to do is to have more time, more freedom, or make more money, and if they can express their passion through the business, so much the better. But I think what's happened, Eric, is that the rate of change is so rapid that none of us can stay abreast of everything by ourselves. We have confidence. People will have confidence in moving forward to the degree that they have clarity. And what I mean by that is that if you're walking down the road and you can see what's up ahead of you, I mean, you'll literally run down the street to go get something that you want. But as soon as there's a bend around the turn, or a bend around the way, you'll slow up to see what's coming because you don't have the clarity to have confidence to move forward consistently. So I think what happens is, and I think the opportunity for us as coaches, and consultants is to really help people not only get that clarity, but maintain that clarity so that they can move forward with confidence and they can move forward with certainty, and ultimately they can get more consistent results. So I think the need for coaching is only going to increase. I think the impact of coaching is only going to expand. I think the necessity of having someone that you can trust and someone who you can work with on an ongoing basis to help you kind of make sense of an ever more rapidly changing world and environment and landscape is not an option. It's a necessity.
Yeah. What I want to hear your thoughts on next is how coaches can make this transition. And what I mean by that is a lot of coaches are coming out of a space where they've been taught by the gurus. I mean, we mentioned a whole list of gurus here at the beginning of the call, and some of them have business coaching franchises that they're selling and whatever, but the predominant mode of training coaches, certainly 10 years ago when I got started in the business, and even as recent as 5 years ago, the predominant way that these coaches have been taught, Spike, is you go into your marketplace and you hold yourself out as a generalist. You have a really generalized and I would say kind of blunted, non-industry specific, kind of crude set of tools, and you try to hold yourself out as somebody who can be a business coach. And frankly, it's like frog in the frying pan for a lot of these business coaches. They're finding it to be harder and harder and harder. So we've been beating this drum for a while because it's worked for us and it's working for coaches around the world. And we've been saying, look, become an aggregator of information that contextualizes, sifts through and contextualizes the information to a very specific niche, a very specific recipient of the of the information that you have. And I hear you saying something very similar. So here's my question to you: how do they do it? I mean, get really practical, right?
I will.
Yeah.
Eric, and I think it's a challenge for coaches, consultants, and really for every business owner, and that is, the biggest thing you have to do is you have to be really, really clear on who it is that you want to work with. And I mean, I know a lot of people know the concept of creating an ideal client and description of who it is you want to work with, from a demographic, from a geographic, from a psychographic, and maybe even from a gender standpoint. But I'm talking about really getting personal, creating a client avatar of, what is it that, think of a person, you can draw a circle and put a smiley face and start to write things around it, but, like, who is it that you're trying to reach? I mean, what are their challenges? What are their fears? What are their hopes? What are their desires? What keeps them up at night? What gets them up in the morning? And think about those people that you really want to reach and you really want to impact. I mean, a large segment of my coaching base are professionals, medical doctors, chiropractors, dentists, plastic surgeons. And the reason being is that, they're great practitioners, but they're not necessarily good business people. And I can tell you that on a industry-wide basis, the global challenges that almost everybody faces. So because of that, I can become a much more effective expert in being able to translate information in terms of marketing, in terms of selling, in terms of management, in terms of leadership, in terms of business operations. I can become a much more effective disseminator of information after I've consolidated information and being able to help them digest it in a way that makes sense to them. And so because of that, I think, number one, you have to get really, really clear. And when I say clear, I don't mean just about the numerical data of who it is that you're working with, but the personal stuff, the things that are really, really frustrating people. I mean, one of my clients is an ophthalmologist, and one of the great frustrations that he had was not only was it hard to get clients, but he was also dealing with all the insurance regulation, the uncertainties around Obamacare and all those types of things. Yep. Well, because I'm able to really kind of take the information that I know as a marketer and as a salesperson and as a business manager, and I can consolidate that information after I gather it, and I can help him digest it in such a way that he can implement it effectively. That has an impact on someone. Now, if I took that same information and I presented it in such a way that I was going to a barber to try to help them manage the business, and I thought their great concern was Obamacare, or I thought their great concern was an insurance company, I'd be out of my doggone mind. But it also allows me to be more effective in gathering the information because I know what's relevant to the clients that I'm working with. Right? I'm not going to be an expert for everybody. I couldn't consult to a scientist. I couldn't consult to an astronaut. I couldn't consult to a professional athlete because that's not my market.
So the question that comes to mind is, and we get this question a lot of time. I mean, just a lot from coaches who come to us and they're entering the business, and of course we explain a lot of these kinds of things that you're elaborating so beautifully, and they say, well, how can I know? I mean, how do I decide? How to nicheify, and you've just mentioned you've kind of niched out and have carved out a space in the, I don't know, we call the medical practitioner field. How did you do it? How did you arrive there? How did you kind of sign off on that and you reach the point of being comfortable with that?
Well, there's three things, and I'll share the advice part, and then I'll share the personal side. The advice part is start where start at the convergence of three areas. Where you're passionate, where you're proficient, and where you have access. Okay. If you're passionate about something, right? And I was passionate about chiropractors and healing and health and all that kind of stuff, and it kind of extended into the medical areas. And so because of that, I was passionate about it, but I became proficient in it because I knew some of the challenges they were facing. Right? They didn't know how to hire people. They didn't know how to market their business. They had certain regulations and things that they could what they could say and what they couldn't say. But also, proximity helped a lot because once I started working with an ophthalmologist, well, they happened to have a friend or a colleague who was in a different service field. When I started working with chiropractors, they also could introduce me to massage therapists, and they also, in turn, could introduce me to personal trainers and people like that who had some of the same challenges in terms of marketing, in terms of selling. But I wasn't trying to be all things to all people. Now, it doesn't mean that I can't go and share at a seminar some very broad concepts and share with people how they can implement them into their own business. But as a coach or a consultant, it's different than being a speaker. It's different than someone who's sharing something from the platform because people don't want just information that they have to interpret for themselves. They want information that you can give them that they can implement in their lives and in their business starting right away in a specific way. So because of that, I think as coaches, we have to really, really narrow in on who it is that we want to impact, but also narrow in on an area that we can be proficient at. I mean, if someone came to me and asked me to consult for NASA, I'd be stoned out of luck because I'm not a scientist, I'm not an engineer, I'm not a rocket, I'm not an astronomer. I know none of those things. So because of that, I'm not trying to be all things to all people. What I've done is that I found a niche where I could become pretty proficient at it and have high leverage. Now, the other question that you have to ask is that, is there a way that you can reach that market effectively? right? Is it someone that you already know? Is it someone that you're already doing business with? Is it someone that you have access to blogs or an internet list or a mailing list or something like that that will allow you to kind of get your message out? You could be the most proficient, most effective person in the world. You can have a clearly defined vision of who it is that you want to work with, but if you cannot reach them, if you cannot communicate with them, you're not going to be successful. So that's why proximity is so important. Start with who you know and start with who loves you best, because you already have their trust. And also, on top of that, you also have their attention. I think as coaches, and one of the challenges I think that we all face is that, we kind of get lumped into like this broad abstract category of, oh yeah, you're one of those people that do one of those things, and I'm not quite sure what it is, but I know what it is. And and because of that, it's hard to rise above the noise to capture someone's attention. And if we can't capture their attention, we can't earn their trust. And if we can't earn their trust, we can't do business with them. So proximity is extremely important. Whether you have it today or whether you can create it easily, those are one of the those are the things that I think you have to start with first. Who is it that you want to reach? What is it you're most passionate and proficient about? And who do you have in your proximity that will allow you to kind of reach in and tap into that person? Now, you may know them directly, or you may know someone who knows someone, and you might have to do it through an introduction, through a referral process, or through some type of a marketing strategy that you can readily access and easily implement that will make all the difference. But you have to be able to reach who it is that you're passionate and proficient in working with. And if you can't reach them, it's not going to do you any good.
Yep. Well, let's say we've got coaches on the line who have identified the niche. They figured it out. Passion, proficiency, proximity. They figured it out, and they're pretty new to the business. Let's get real technical. I mean, the whole thing is, as you said, you got to get out there with your message. You got to cut through all the clutter and the proliferation of information. You got to get very industry-specific information, solutions to the people who want it the best. Let's talk technical, because you've been a consultant to a lot of these guys, the Jay Abrahams, all these guys. I mean, you've helped them, and you're a good marketeer. You're friends with Sheffrin and the rest of these guys. Okay, let's get real practical. What do they need to know about internet marketing and promulgating their message in 2012?
Well, it's a great question, Eric. I tell you, you're a wonderful interviewer, and I appreciate you asking great questions. It makes it easier for me to kind of organize my thoughts. I think part of it, and this isn't just for coaches. This is businesses in general. But since we're talking about coaches right now, I'll make it very, very specific. Part of being successful in any business is our ability to scale, our ability to do the things that have high leverage in our business. And I think one of the things that happens, Eric, is that sometimes people want to be expert in everything. They think they need to know everything about internet marketing. They think they need to know everything about selling. They think they need to know everything about copywriting. So what happens is that they become marginal at a lot of things. And the bottom line is they can't be effective for themselves, and they can't be effective for someone else. So what I would say is that as a coach, one of the things that I'm going to think about is that what are the high leverage activities that I can have in my business? What are the things that I can do best? What are the things that are going to drive the most dollars and cents to my business? What are the things that are going to have the biggest impact on scaling my business that I can do personally? Everything else should either be outsourced, should be delegated, relegated, or eliminated. And if I can do that, it allows me to become much more effective in doing the things that I do best, and allows me to scale my business. So when someone says to me, well, how do I market myself on the internet? Well, you know what? Find somebody who markets on the internet and get them to do it for you, right? How do I write sales copy? Well, you know what? Find somebody who writes sales copy so they can write it for you. Trying to be proficient at everything by yourself allows you to be marginal at everything, and really won't allow you to have the impact that you need, for your business to grow. Even if you can be successful in the short term, you'll never be able to scale that business in the long term. And it's not just as a coach. I mean, I see this, with business owners all over the place. You're working with a professional, and they're a great practitioner, but they're trying to figure out how to market. They're trying to figure out how to be a manager. They're trying to figure out how to be an accountant. They're trying to figure out how to do all these things that they have no business doing. In many cases, they can outsource it. They can partner with it. They can hire for it. There's lots of ways that they can access those types of things without having to do those things themselves. And that's why the advent of like Odesk and Elance and all those things that surround us are so not only affordable but essential, because it allows us to kind of ramp up and scale in areas that we don't necessarily have to become proficient in.
So well said. I mean, the learning curve these days required to really get proficient at marketing online has just been, it's just been exacerbated by the proliferation of information over the last couple of years. It's amazing, and you know that as well as anybody. So here's the next question then. What should a coach be focusing on? I mean, if the goal isn't to become necessarily an internet marketing expert, but to find people who've got those areas of expertise, outsource it to them, hire them. And yesterday on the call, we were talking with we were talking with Darren Sherlaw. No, actually, it was the day before. I was talking with who was it? The days are all starting to blend together. Oh, Taki, and we were talking about how easy it is to hire somebody from the Philippines to work for you for a couple, $200-300 for a full-time, highly qualified person. So anyway, yeah, it's easy to go find people to do this stuff, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
But what is it that a coach should be focused on if they're not focusing on the technicalities of all that stuff?
Well, I'd say a couple things, Eric. I mean, one is, obviously the things that are going to have the highest leverage in your business, but also the things that are going to have the highest leverage in your client's business. And what I mean by that is that, I think as coaches and consultants, we all have a little bit of ego, and I do too. I mean, I'm going to be candid. I mean, I like, being the hero sometimes, and that's kind of why I got into turnarounds. It was like the you ride to the charge, you rescue, save the day, and all that kind of stuff. And there's lots of kudos that go with it, but there's a cost in doing that. But I think if you talk to many of my clients today, it's not just the information that I bring or the insights that I share with people. It's also my ability to access things very rapidly. So I think one of the things as coaches, what we need to be doing is not just focusing on the information that we can bring, but also the things that we can access that our clients may not be able to or may not have time to, because we can do it on a broad scale. And I'll use the example that you brought up. You can outsource it to the Philippines. Well, if you're a bagel shop owner, you may know that you can do that, but you may not know how to do it. You may not have time to do it. But if you have 10 clients who all of a sudden are looking to outsource virtual assistants, well, great. You can find a credible resource that you can offer to all of your clients. And now that becomes part of your portfolio, but it also becomes part of the value that you bring to the relationship. Yeah. And a lot of the people that work with me not just because of what I can share with them, but also who I can access for them or with them in such a way that they don't have to go out and try to cultivate that relationship or try to figure out how to do it or who to do it with.
Yes. Yeah. So you're really bringing to them your network of solution providers, the specialists that you are using to get your job done.
Yeah, it really is, Eric, and part of it, and the reason why I say the ego thing is so important is that it's not about whether I do it, it's not about how smart I am, it's about the results I can help my clients create. And once I was able to embrace that and kind of get over that that hero complex where I had to be the guy that had all the answers and I had to be the person that provided all the solutions and I had to be the person that was doing all the work, it made my life a lot easier, made my business a lot more profitable, but also more scalable. So I think as coaches, to be successful in the future, that's not going to be it's not going to be a option. It's going to be a necessity, because I think we have to be able to access information. We have to be able to access expertise. We have to be able to access tools that our clients either don't know how to or don't have time to. And to the degree that we can do that, we can be more successful and more valuable in the relationships that we cultivate.
Yeah, that's right. Now, listen, I just want to mention, now's a good time to be answering questions or asking questions. So feel free to type into the question box if you have questions specifically. But really, Spike, what you're saying is, and if I can extrapolate this from what you're saying, if you are in the business of mastering the kinds of business strategies and techniques and best practices in a given niche, that you can come alongside and teach the business owner how to implement, as well as developed a cadre, if you like, or a band of brothers, so to speak, a bunch of good service providers who also have a specialization in that niche. Man, now you're not bringing just yourself as a specialist in that niche. You're bringing a team of specialists that functions virtually like a, just like a SWAT team that can come in with a high-level expertise in a given application and get the job done.
Yeah, absolutely. Eric, I'll share with you an example that I think everyone can relate to. I mean, if you go back 5 years ago on the internet when it came to internet marketing, there was someone that you went to who was an internet marketer, right? Yeah. Because they were an internet marketer, that meant they were an expert in marketing on the internet. Well, now it's become nichified because marketing on the internet could involve copywriting, could involve search engine optimization, could involve search engine marketing, could involve social media, could involve joint ventures, could involve backlinking strategies, could involve website design, could involve membership and continuity program development. So now all of a sudden, there's all these things, and to go to any one person who's going to be the best or really, really proficient at all of those things, the chances of finding that one person are pretty doggone difficult. And if you could find that one person, the chances of you affording it are almost nil. So, really what you want to do, I think, as a coach is not only be a collaborator with your clients, but also be a collaborator with other specialists and other providers so that you can bring those people to bear when it's necessary. Yes,
very well said. So this is such rich information, and as you think about 2012 and you imagine the Coach Center call making this transition from, I don't want to just be a generalist with a vague set of information that anybody can find using the right keyword terms in Google, but I want to go out with a very industry-specific, very refined set of solutions to people, and I want to take my message out there, and I know I'm going to need to get people helping me to promulgate the message online. That's great. Where do people start? Let's get even more specific from your own background.
Yeah.
Where do you start?
Yeah, the very first thing that I would do is that once I've identified, who it is that I want to work with and the things that I can bring to the table, is that I'm going to look for people who are key influencers or people who are authorities or people who are recognized brands or experts in that space. Now, it doesn't necessarily, mean that it has to be a Jay Abraham or a Tony Robbins or someone like that, but who is it that has access or influence or credibility and ideally a willingness to introduce you and your expertise to their marketplace in such a way that they can benefit, you can benefit, and the market can benefit. It could be something as simple as having someone mention you on their blog. It could be, as formal as having someone pick up the phone and make a phone call and do a three-way call or introduce you to them while they're in your office. But I think your ability to collaborate and your ability to communicate with people who have the trust of the marketplace that you're trying to reach is essential. I mean, Eric, think about this. Part of the reason why I'm speaking with your clients and the people that are on this call is because you have a relationship with them. I have a relationship with you. We have a relationship with a common colleague. And so because of that, we were able to come together, hopefully deliver value for me, deliver value for you, but most importantly, deliver value for the audience in a unique way that they couldn't get somewhere else, because they're not going to get what we're doing together in the same form, in the same fashion anywhere else on earth. Right now, they're getting it because it's just you and I. So I think our ability to collaborate, but also to communicate with those people that have access to the market that we want, that either can endorse us, refer us, or in some cases, partner with us, is absolutely essential. And if you think about this, in any business, but especially I think in the advisory business as a coach or consultant, one of the great challenges that we have is being able to rise above the noise. Right?
Yeah.
We spend all this time, we spend all this energy trying to get someone's attention, but even if we get their attention, what do we need to do next? We have to earn their trust, because without the trust, the relationship can't exist, and without the relationship, the transaction never takes place. So I think, where we can tap into levers of trust. I mean, right before this call, I got off the phone with Greg Link, who works with Stephen Covey and Stephen M.R. Covey. And Greg Link and Stephen M.R. Covey have a brand new book that's coming out in January. Now, Stephen called me up and said, can I collaborate with you a little bit on, some strategies to maybe, broaden the release of this book. Now, keep in mind, the last book that Stephen M.R. Covey released, they sold 1 million copies.
Yeah.
Okay. Now Greg Link, who's the co-author of the upcoming book, and has been a collaborator with Stephen Covey and Stephen M.R. Covey for years, is calling me to say, what is it that I can tap into? Who is it that I can reach? And what strategies can I be using? Now, I say that not to impress everybody on the call, but what I'm saying is that the ability to tap into networks or have people tap into your network or the people that you can collaborate with, it's absolutely essential to not only getting your message out, but also earning the trust of the marketplace that you're trying to get. And incidentally, Greg's new book is on trust, and we're talking about the currency of trust. The last thing that I'll just mention on this point, Eric, and it's a little bit tangential, but I think it's important. As business owners, we're used to measuring ROI, right? Return on investment is one of the things that allows us to determine where we should be focusing our action. To me, I think the thing that most people overlook, and I think it's absolutely essential and will only be more essential as we go forward, and that's ROR, return on relationship. What is it that I can put into this relationship that will allow me to get out of this relationship or to get out of another relationship that will most benefit me and most benefit my business? Now, I'm not saying you do it on an altruistic way and you don't do it on a parasitic way, but what you do is that you do it in a collaborative way so that everyone that's involved in that relationship can benefit.
Yeah, that's so good. I mean, the the epiphany that I got as I was listening to all this is figuring out what your message is going to be and who you're going to speak to, and setting up the infrastructure, the systems of technology, the qualified technical help. It was awesome. But that's really first base. Second base is the ROR concept, isn't it? We just got a note here from Laurie. He liked it, and I like it, and I think we all like it. That return on relationship. I mean, it's the relationships that we're going to use to get, really get the leverage. I mean, and get the opportunities to share our message with people. I mean, if I summarize it, from a more technical perspective, if I go out and I get somebody to help me put up a landing page, or a website, and it has a video and then an opt-in box and a piece of bait or something that you use to bribe people to give you a name and email address, and then they get into my automated follow-up sequence and they read my blogs and they get to my YouTube channel, that's all great, and I can have all that engine and all those mechanical things worked out, but I still got to get people to my site, don't I?
Absolutely, you sure do.
And so the epiphany was you're going to do that through relationships.
Yep.
That's what I love about it.
And Eric, there's just one other element that I would share with that. I mean, if you think about where most businesses spend their time, it really is, trying to get the attention of people, but also trying to earn their trust. And, if I haven't done business with someone in the past, I mean, the very first thing that I want to do is that I want to verify their credibility or their, their authority or whatever it is that's, going to be my criteria for making a decision. But if someone that I know and someone that I trust introduces that person to me, guess what? The speed of trust goes way up, right? Which, incidentally, was Stephen M. R. Covey's first book, The Speed of Trust. And the faster that I'm able to earn that trust, the quicker I can grow my business, the quicker I can have an impact for my clients. So what I want to do is that I want to look for people not only that are going to make a casual introduction, but people that really, truly either believe in what it is that I do or have had a demonstrated experience of what it is that I do, so that when they're speaking, they're not just speaking, they're speaking emphatically about the value that I'm going to bring to that relationship that they're introducing me to. And hopefully what I've done is that I've created value in advance so that when when the opportunity comes up, it's not like I'm asking a perfect stranger to do it for me. I mean, I use LinkedIn. I've been using LinkedIn. I've been teaching LinkedIn for about 6 years since the advent of the thing. But, I get a kick out of this that, once or twice a week I get somebody that I've never heard of that I just happen to be linked to, or they ask me to endorse them. Because I'm linked, because I'm linked to them in LinkedIn, then I'm going to stand up, put my name, put my brand, put my reputation behind what it is that they do, and I've never had an interaction with them. Now I consider myself a pretty nice person, and I think I could be very generous to people, but I'm not going to, put it on the line for someone that I don't know and vouch for them just because I happen to have a social network connection with them. So I think one of the things that we can do as coaches and consultants and as professionals is create value in advance. I mean, think about some of the people that are most significant, most influential, and most impactful in the market that you're trying to reach, and figure out what it is that you can do to create value for them now. Maybe you do a free consult with them. Maybe you make an introduction for them. Maybe you do something that helps them build their business so that when the time comes where they can introduce you to their marketplace, or they can endorse you, or they can provide a recommendation or referral for you, then not only are they willing to do it, they're willing to do it enthusiastically. Because that has a whole different connotation than if someone's just saying, okay, I'm going to sell your product, or I'm going to make mention of you to my list. If they come out and they endorse you, they come out and they really, refer you or recommend you in an emphatic way, it's different than if they just send out an email to the list saying, hey, here's this guy, Spike Humor. I don't really know him. I haven't really worked with him, but you might want to pay attention to what he's doing, but then maybe not. So it's a whole different dynamic.
Yeah, we've talked about it. That is really good, and I like the emphasis on trust. We've talked about this concept of a trust bucket, which is you've got to fill up the trust bucket sufficiently before you can make a withdrawal on it. It's a little bit like a bank account. Relationships are currency. Trust is the currency of relationships, and you've got to make deposits before you can make withdrawals. So it sounds like the recommendation for 2012 for business coaches is get out there and build trusting relationships with the people that can bring their networks to you, add a bunch of value to that network of relationships, really give freely of yourself, do webinars, do seminars, do these kind of events, do mutual blog posts. I mean, just do all things you can do to add value. And then make sure you've got an automated message marketing promulgation system set up from a technological perspective.
Yep, absolutely. I think you nailed it spot on. And by the way, I love that analogy of the trust bucket. I'll borrow it, but I'll give you credit for it because I had not heard it before. So thank you.
Yeah, you're quite welcome. Well, this is really good, and we're fast approaching the end of the hour here. If there's any more questions, now's the time. Are there any other trends that we should be aware of for 2012? I mean, we've just discussed this one, which is the big one, but are there any others that you're aware of?
Yeah, I guess the last one that I would share, Rick, is this. And this, I think this is pretty well known, but I think it's going to be not just optional; it's going to be essential as we go forward. The first sale that we have to make on our value or our expertise is the sale that we make to ourselves, right? But I think to the degree that we can narrow our niche, laser our focus, and really enhance our proficiency in that niche and in that focus, the easier it is for us to sell ourselves. You and I were talking before the call, and I said one of the things that I'm not great at is I don't like to brag about what I've done and that kind of stuff. And you said I'll drag it out of you, but it's not that it's not that I don't have confidence in it. But I do know this is that when I'm really, really confident about my abilities in something, it's easier for me to talk about it in such a way that I'm not being arrogant, I'm not being boastful, I'm being clinical. Yeah. And so I think as coaches, the fact that if we can enhance our effectiveness, enhance our our skill set and enhance our value, maybe through our relationships or through our contacts and those types of things, it makes it much easier for us to sell ourselves because we're really, really clear on the value that we're going to bring to that prospect and that potential relationship.
Man, that is really, really good. The more specific we become in our calling and what we're doing, the more wins we get, the more confidence we get in ourselves, the easier it is to make that most important sale of every single day, which is selling ourselves on ourselves, man. That is really good. I love that. I love it. And that's just another apologetic for this whole message, isn't it? Which is, get really specifically good at something, and it'll be easier for you to believe in you. Love that stuff. Well, listen, this has just been fantastic, and a lot of comments coming in. One of them, another one saying, "Hey, amazing content today, Spike," and I agree. This has been amazing content. And hey, if people want to find you online and jump into your network, opt in, get your stuff, how do they do it?
Well, I'm pretty visible in a lot of the social networks like Facebook and that kind of stuff, and it's Spike Humer, Humer, one M, not an OR, it's Humer. But they can go to the 10dayturnaroundbook.com, and that's the number 10. They can go to smallbusinessbreakthroughs.com, which is another one of my sites, or they can go to my home site, which is spikehumer.com.
Great, yeah, and obviously places to opt in and start hearing from you. And what are you pushing out these days? What's your content creation like? What can people expect if they opt in?
Well, right now, my focus for the early part of the year is going to be creating a number of small business advisory sites, but also I'm relaunching a product on joint ventures in the early part of the year. And when I talk about joint ventures, I'm not just talking about list promotions. I'm talking about strategic alliances and really creative and strategic collaboration between business owners, professionals, and people. And that's really going to be my focus in the first quarter. So as people opt into my list or lists, they'll start seeing more of that information and more of that content coming from me in the early part of the year.
Excellent. So everything we just talked about, which is setting up these really win-win relationships and helping each other, you're going to just be putting out a bunch of good content on that stuff.
Well, I hope that it's good. I know it's going to be a lot.
Okay. All right. Well, this is very good. Hey, again, thank you, my friend. Appreciate everything you've poured out on us. And, again, a lot of good comments from people here today who are appreciating what you've shared. And folks, go out and opt in to Spike's list and just gulp this stuff down. It's really great. Okay, thank you, everybody, and thank you again. Yeah, we'll speak to you soon, and we'll speak to the rest of you tomorrow and Friday on our last two expert interviews we had toward the end of 2011. So take care, and bye for now.